The small town of Renton had never seen anything like it. On a quiet Tuesday morning, Officer Lydia Marek responded to what she thought was a routine welfare check at a rundown trailer on the edge of town. What she found would unearth a horror buried for years. The stench hit her before she even opened the door. Inside, amidst a clutter of junk and rotting furniture, she found the body of 53-year-old Alan Rayburn, a reclusive handyman known to few. But it wasn't his death that sent shockwaves. It was what lay beneath the floorboards. A wooden chest, locked, hidden, and inside, a weathered map marked with red XS, each accompanied by a name and date. Some names were known. Missing persons, years cold. Others, complete mysteries. As investigators quickly realized, the XS were graves. And Alan Rayburn may have been one of the most prolific serial killers the state had never known. Alan lived on the fringes. Locals remembered him as quiet and odd, but never violent. He fixed leaky faucets, patched roofs, and kept to himself. There were no family photos, no friends, no known relatives. No social media. No trace. Neighbors said his truck came and went at odd hours. No one thought to question it. Police reviewed old complaints, petty trespassing, strange noises at night, reports of him talking to himself loudly, all dismissed. Just a lonely man with a toolbox. But when they traced the first X to a shallow grave 5 miles into the woods, and found the skeletal remains of Kayla Jennings, a 17-year-old who vanished in 2011, it became clear Alan Rayburn had secrets. And the map? It was only the beginning. Digging further into Rayburn's trailer, investigators found something more disturbing than the map, a locked crawl space. Inside, police uncovered rows of labeled jars, each containing personal trinkets, earrings, hair ties, scraps of clothing, a school ID, a plastic doll's arm. A handwritten ledger documented each item with a date and a cryptic code. He had catalogued them. But for what purpose? A diary was discovered, pages filled with disconnected thoughts, symbols, and chilling phrases. They whisper louder when the moon is thin, and red means ready. Blue means buried. Psychologists called it organized delusion. The FBI called it obsession. The public called it evil. Authorities rushed to match every red X on the map with a potential burial site. So far, they had confirmed 5, all in remote, wooded areas, always near water, always in places Alan had done handyman work. Victims ranged in age, race, and background. No clear pattern. The only constant was how deeply buried they were, and how carefully their graves were concealed. Some had been missing over a decade. Forensic teams worked tirelessly. News coverage exploded. Families of the missing watched in horror as names were confirmed. Parents who never had closure now received it in the worst way possible. Then came the breakthrough. A woman named Carla Denton came forward, trembling and pale. She was in her late 30s, had spent years in psychiatric care, and claimed that in 2008, a man matching Rayburn's description picked her up on the highway. He said he'd fix my tire. But then, I woke up in a dark place. She remembered flashes, being tied, gagged, the sound of dripping water, a creaky door, a dog barking in the distance. And then, somehow, escape. She ran for what felt like hours, blooded and barefoot. Police pulled records. Sure enough, Carla had been reported missing for 3 days that year, only to be found, dazed, miles away from where she vanished. Her case was closed as a mental break. But now, it had horrifying new context. The diary's strange codes were now a central focus. Investigators believed they corresponded with specific victims. Red RJ-12B may have referred to Rita Jackson, last seen in 2012 near Building 12B at her workplace. Blue K3NS might have pointed to Kevin Shaw, a third-grade teacher who vanished after a night shift in North Springs. They brought in code breakers, behavioral profilers, linguists, all trying to piece together the language of a killer. Each time they cracked one, a new body was found. It was a deadly puzzle, and the stakes were lives. Some codes seemed to reference future plans. Others, unknown. The fear grew. Was this just a record of the past? Or a guide to victims who hadn't yet been discovered? The press went into overdrive. The map killer, headlines screamed. News vans camped outside the police department. Families begged for answers. Activists criticized the years of missed signs. Alan Rayburn's face, pale, gaunt, cold-eyed, became a national symbol of evil. But some weren't convinced he acted alone. Internet sleuths dissected the map and found curious details. Symbols etched into the corners, arrows pointing off map. Was someone else involved? Had Alan left clues for a reason? In an old storage unit Alan had rented under a fake name, police found a box labeled Mother. Inside were photos, trinkets, and a scorched journal. The journal belonged to Elaine Rayburn, Alan's mother. Its contents painted a picture of abuse, isolation, and deep psychological damage. She referred to her son as my little guardian, and described games they played in the woods, games that sounded disturbingly close to the burial patterns. Had she trained him, molded him, or was she simply another victim? One line haunted investigators. He buries the bad ones to keep the voices quiet. The original map had a jagged edge, torn. Part of it was missing. Analysts believed it could contain at least 5 more locations. Security footage from a nearby gas station showed Alan meeting with someone 2 weeks before his death, a young man in a hoodie, face obscured. Could this man have the missing piece? Was Alan passing the torch? Or was he warning someone? The search widened. Police warned the public, if you see anything resembling the torn map fragment, report it immediately. The possibility that someone else now held the keys to unknown graves chilled everyone. One X on the confirmed map led to a public playground built in 2016. The area had once been forest, now cleared, paved, and covered with swings. The excavation was controversial. Families protested, but the team proceeded. 6 feet beneath the surface, they found her. A girl, no older than 10. No identification. Just a purple hair clip and the remnants of a stuffed bear. The media dubbed her Playground Jane. She wasn't on any missing persons list. And that terrified everyone more. Days after the playground discovery, investigators received an anonymous package addressed simply to Renton PD. Inside was a small, ornate wooden box, locked with a 3-digit combination dial. Taped to the top, a Polaroid of a forest clearing. A new location. The image was grainy, but familiar. One detective recognized it as Deadwood Hollow, a defunct hiking trail 40 miles north. Alongside the box, a single matchstick, burned on one end. The media speculated it was a taunt. A game. But the box? It was more. When finally opened using the code 187 homicide, it revealed a single silver charm bracelet, engraved with initials L.T. Another victim. But who was LT? The Deadwood Hollow site was immediately excavated. Dogs hit on a scent. 7 feet down, under moss and loose stone, lay the bones of a teenage girl. Dental records matched a girl missing since 2006, Lisa Trent. Last seen at a summer camp near the woods. She'd been forgotten. Found with her were 2 additional bracelets, one broken, the other child-sized. But no bodies. The implications were horrifying. There may be more graves nearby, or victims Alan never finished burying. Locals reported strange lights seen in the woods years prior. The legend of the Hollow Watcher had become folklore. Now, it had a face. Detectives revisited Carla Denton, the woman who'd escaped years ago. Under hypnosis and with trauma therapists, she began drawing frantic sketches of what she remembered. One drawing showed a wooden archway with rope tied in symbols, eerily similar to findings at the Deadwood Hollow site. Another depicted a man not Alan, but someone younger. Blonde. Thin. With a tattoo of a star on his wrist. Was this the mystery man from the gas station footage? Carla began remembering more. He called Alan father. But I don't think they were related. The possibility of a protege or cult-like dynamic emerged. The case was spiraling into something far darker. Forensics recovered a corrupted hard drive from Alan's trailer. After weeks of decoding, they found a single usable file, a video diary, timestamped 3 days before his death. In it, Alan sits before the camera, eyes sunken. They say you can't silence screams, but you can bury them. Every X was a scream that stopped. He speaks of cleansing and refers to someone named Milo. I taught him what pain is. He taught me what to fear. Then Alan stays dead into the camera. If they find him, they'll wish they never did. The hunt for Milo had begun. Using facial enhancement on Carla's sketches and footage from the gas station, police finally identified the man, Miles Milo Granger, a troubled youth Alan mentored during a brief stint at a local community program. Milo had a record: trespassing, animal cruelty, arson as a juvenile. He'd vanished in 2020. Off the grid. Police issued an APB. A cabin registered to Milo's deceased grandfather in rural Oregon became the next target. Inside, empty, except for a crude mural painted on the wall, a map, not of Renton, but of new territory. With fresh excess, the mural map pointed toward 6 heavily wooded regions in Oregon, Washington, and Idaho. Each one marked in red. Search teams mobilized. It felt like chasing a ghost. At the first site, in a nature preserve, cadaver dogs found traces: blood, burnt fabric, fragments of bone. Too damaged for DNA. At the second site, buried beneath a hollow tree trunk, a box of children's shoes, all sizes, all tagged with dates. Milo was continuing the ritual. Worse, he was evolving it. Buried with the shoebox was a journal. Milo's. His entries were cold, analytical. Day 14, the girl didn't scream. Disappointment. Day 20, buried near pine. Feels better. Father said to listen. The ground hums when it's time. Pages were smeared with mud, blood, and one word repeated: Echo. Was Echo a victim? A code? Or something else entirely? At the third site, a cave network in northern Washington, authorities found a hidden camera, rigged to a motion sensor. The footage showed a girl, maybe 16, chained and crying. She pleaded for help. Then, Milo entered the frame. He stroked her hair, then looked directly into the lens and whispered, "She's Echo now." There was no footage of her escape or death. But the timestamp? Only 9 days prior. The race to find her began. Search teams scoured the nearby woods. Deep in the forest, under a false floor in a collapsed cabin, they found her. Echo, real name Elsie Connor, was barely alive. Malnourished, bruised, traumatized. But alive. She'd been missing for 3 weeks. Elsie said Milo had talked to the walls, claimed they spoke in Alan's voice. He made her repeat prayers before sleep. He said if I disobeyed, I'd be buried without a name. Her rescue was a miracle, but the horror was far from over. Elsie confirmed it. Milo had a 5th map, new, detailed, stained with red ink. She had seen him marking it nightly. He spoke of finishing Father's plan and that the last grave must be mine. FBI artists recreated the map based on Elsie's descriptions. 1X sat directly over a small coastal town, Haven Reach, population 600. The town prepared for hell. A tip from a retired nurse leads detectives to a shuttered psychiatric facility on the outskirts of Cincinnati. Alan Rayburn was briefly committed there in the early 2000s after an attempted suicide and several documented psychotic episodes. Investigators comb through dusty medical records and find notes from a Dr. Victor Linz, a psychiatrist who treated Rayburn. Lindsay's notes describe a patient obsessed with transference through pain and anchoring memories in blood. The detective team is shaken by a revelation. During Alan's brief hospitalization, 5 patients went missing. They were never found. One of the newly identified locations on the map is a storm drain by the Ohio River. When forensics arrives, they discover human remains inside a submerged steel barrel. The DNA matches one of the missing psychiatric patients. Police now believe the hospital was Alan's original hunting ground, a place where no one asked too many questions. Even more disturbing, one of the symbols on the map, a crescent moon over water, matches the hospital's original logo. It's not just a trophy map. It's a life story in symbols. Detectives track down Warden Teresa Malloy, who oversaw the psychiatric hospital during Rayburn's stay. Now in a retirement home and battling dementia, she responds strangely when Rayburn's name is mentioned. She mutters, "He painted it with their names. All of them. All over the walls." After some coaxing, she reveals that Rayburn was obsessed with a specific corridor in the hospital's basement, where patient files and maintenance equipment were stored. A search team is dispatched. The basement is decaying, flooded in parts, but one corner wall is covered in dried blood patterns and crude artwork scratched into concrete. Each etching is paired with initials and a date. 32 markings in total. This is Alan Rayburn's original memory wall. But the initials don't match any police database. The implication: these may be victims from before the map began. Victims who were never even reported missing. Detectives begin combing old case files of transient disappearances and psychiatric patients discharged to unknown addresses. A woman comes forward claiming to have escaped Rayburn years ago. Her name is Leah Deming, and her story begins at that very hospital. She was a young intern when she met Rayburn during a supervised art therapy session. He became obsessed with her. One night, he followed her home. She was attacked, stabbed, and left for dead in her bathtub, but survived. Her injuries were dismissed as a random home invasion. But now, she recounts details matching Alan's signature. Her journals from recovery mention the man who painted with pain. Leah Deming agrees to return to the basement corridor, accompanied by police and psychologists. As she walks through the dim halls, she breaks down at the memory of being dragged through them. She pauses at a specific marking on the wall and whispers, "That's my initials. That's the night he tried to end me." Investigators realize that even though Leah survived, she was marked as a successful victim in Alan's twisted system. Her initials were the first, the beginning of the collection. Inside a broken electrical cabinet in the basement, police find a small, locked metal box. Inside are photos, over 50, and pieces of jewelry, keys, scraps of hair, and a bloodstained diary. The diary's pages describe each kill in coded language, but the codes align with the symbols on the map. The final pages mention completion, a location, and a final offering. The implication: one more victim remains unaccounted for, possibly someone Alan believes will complete the pattern. The final location on the map is a remote cabin in West Virginia's wilderness. The map had obscured it under several layers of ink and symbols, but digital forensics revealed the coordinates. Police mobilize immediately, fearing Alan has one last victim prepared for ritual. The team arrives to find signs of recent activity: a fire pit still warm, a blood-soaked tarp, and fresh tire tracks. But no one is there. It's a ghost scene. And something even more chilling is found nailed to a tree: a photograph of the lead detective, Martha Reyes, taken just days ago. A USB drive is recovered from the cabin, containing a video message. Alan appears, calm and composed, addressing Detective Reyes by name. "You've walked my journey well," he says. But this isn't the end. It's the pivot. The map was only the outline. The next canvas is yours. Attached is a digital map with her home, her children's school, and her favorite park all marked. This is no longer about past crimes. It's about psychological warfare. Alan's true final act is still unfolding. Detective Reyes is placed under 24-hour protection. Meanwhile, the FBI launches a manhunt for Alan Rayburn, now considered the most dangerous fugitive in modern history. News spreads like wildfire. Public fear escalates. Vigilantes form online to track Alan's last digital movements. One analyst discovers a hidden layer in the USB's file, a second map, this one structured like a brain. Alan has shifted focus. He's now operating through manipulation, influence, and triggering public chaos. The next victims may not be physical. They may be psychological. The map's final marking brought them to a dense, wooded stretch of private land, a place untouched by development, buried in silence. The team approached with caution, their every step met with the weight of finality. They weren't just chasing clues anymore. They were walking into Alan Rayburn's final confession. The sight was grotesque. A clearing opened to a circle of crude wooden crosses. On each hung a personal item belonging to the victims: lockets, socks, school ID cards, mementos hung like grim trophies. In the center stood a glass box, protected by a rusted metal frame. Inside, another map. A second layer. Beneath every X was another X. The truth had always been deeper. It was a devastating twist. The team had followed breadcrumbs, but Rayburn had orchestrated a scavenger hunt of trauma. Inside the glass container lay a weathered notebook and a camcorder. The notebook, handwritten by Rayburn, detailed not only his crimes but his ideology. Each murder was planned, dated, and described in poetic, chilling prose. The killer saw himself as a historian of human pain. The camcorder contained hours of footage. Victims bound, crying. Him speaking to the camera like a professor, analyzing their fear. Detective Hurst couldn't watch it all. She stopped after 2 tapes. One of the victims had been reported missing only 3 weeks prior. Rayburn had been active, right under their noses. They weren't closing a case. They were stepping into a still bleeding wound. Camille was brought back in. She watched parts of the footage. In one tape, she heard her own name. Alan had mentioned her as the one who slipped through the cracks. Her stomach turned. He knew she had survived. He wanted her to live. She wasn't an escape. She was a planted witness. A living echo of his crimes. That realization shattered Camille's healing. She wasn't a victor. She was part of his design. And now, she had to decide whether to testify publicly. Her words could damn him permanently, but the cost would be reliving every horror. Back at the lab, they deciphered Rayburn's final tapes. One recorded monologue revealed his origin. The childhood abuse. The foster homes. The priest who looked the other way. The counselor who didn't listen. "Pain taught me the world's rules," he said. "So I obeyed those rules." But it wasn't justification. It was legacy. Rayburn wanted to immortalize his story. Through bodies. Through maps. Through myth. Detective Hurst saw it clearly now. He didn't want to disappear. He wanted to be remembered. Infamous. Eternal. Each second layer X led to burial spots that held not bodies, but pieces of Alan's life, childhood drawings, photos of his parents, burned letters, broken toys. Emotional time capsules. He was linking pain to pain, forcing the investigation to pass through his emotional landscape. One box held a letter addressed to Hurst. "You remind me of my mother," it read. She, too, saw the monsters but kept them inside. This wasn't a crime scene. It was psychological warfare. One final X marked an old, unregistered grave. A headstone read, Jonathan Rayburn, 1949 to 1996. Alan's father. Forensics confirmed it. His body had been there for decades. A hammer was buried with him. Blood remnants on the wood matched his DNA. Alan had killed his father as a teenager and buried the secret. The first murder. The origin. It wasn't just a pattern. It was a prophecy. Every kill afterward was a retelling. The police department held a press conference. Alan Rayburn's crimes were confirmed, his legacy laid bare. But they chose not to release the tapes. Only the facts. Camille, shaking, stood beside Hurst. She spoke for 3 minutes. "I am not his message. I am my own story." The room stood silent. It was the first time a survivor had spoken, and the last time Camille ever talked publicly about the case. The town changed. People moved. Murals were painted over. Rayburn's house was razed to the ground. Hurst retired 2 months later. But the internet kept the case alive. Forums, podcasts, theories. Some called it the map of grief. Others believed there were more victims, more maps. Even in death, Rayburn haunted the margins. A final tape, hidden in the back of the camcorder, was labeled The End. Rayburn spoke directly to the camera. "You think you caught me, but I chose the ending. I built the story. You just followed the breadcrumbs." He smiled. "And one day, someone will follow yours." It ended with static. Detective Hurst visited the last site alone. The wind through the trees. The crosses long removed. She buried the letter he wrote her. She didn't burn it. She didn't frame it. She just gave it back to the earth. The story didn't end with a bullet or a trial. It ended with a map returned to silence. And that silence, it finally felt like peace. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to True Crime Hub. These cases aren't just headlines. They are echoes of real pain, and every share keeps their memory alive. Stay safe, stay aware, and never ignore the signs.